Hey guys, Mosa here, and today I'm bringing you my Week 6 NFL Power Rankings. Now, without a further ado, let's get started. Now, starting out with number 32, we got the Carolina Panthers, 1-4, just lost to the Chicago Bears, and will take on the Falcons this upcoming week in Carolina. Now, honestly, when it comes to Carolina, I've always said it, they're a terrible team. Andy Dalton or Bryce Young doesn't matter, it's not going to be any different. Although they did get their first win with Andy Dalton, but it's still going to be a tough season. They're probably going to get the number one overall pick. They're probably going to be a top 5 draft pick, somewhere around there. They're going to be that terrible. And honestly, they're going up against the Falcons, who just beat the Buccaneers on Thursday Night Football. So I have no expectations for Andy Dalton and the Panthers to beat the Falcons in their own home. Now on to the New England Patriots. We got the Patriots at 1-4, just lost to the Dolphins, and will take on the Texans at home. Now when it comes to the New England Patriots, Jacoby Brissett doing pretty okay, but they're just not coming up with the win. They just so close. They're close to winning, but their only win was against the Bengals. Week 1, and then they've been on a 4-game losing streak. So honestly, I don't see anything better this upcoming week from the Patriots, especially going up against Houston. And when it comes to Drake May, they should leave him on the bench, maybe start him week 18, but besides that, don't even let Drake May see the field because you're gonna get him killed. Now on to the Las Vegas Raiders, coming up on a loss against the Broncos, and they're going up against the Steelers this upcoming week. 2-3 start for the Las Vegas Raiders. To be honest, this team is definitely going for a rebuild. I don't see them making the playoffs, but I do see them being middle of the pack in the draft. So they're going to have to worry about who they're going to take in the draft, because by this point, I don't think the Raiders will make the playoffs. Gardner Minshew is a decent backup quarterback, but he's not a starter. He's never going to be a starter. He's only a starter right now because what did the Raiders have? But in the end, when it comes down to it, I think the Las Vegas Raiders will most likely try and be a top 5, top 10 draft pick and select the quarterback like Sanders or even Carson Beck or Quinn Ewers. Who knows? But in the end, when it comes down to it, the Raiders are just not going to have it this year. Now, coming off the bye, we got the Tennessee Titans, and they're going to go up against the Colts. They're 1-3. But when it comes down to the Titans, honestly, the Colts are a little bit better, but it's mostly a 50-50 game. When it comes to the Titans in general, is Will Levis your guy? That's the big question they're asking over there. And they're coming off a bye, so they've got some rest. So hopefully for all Titans fans, they're all rested up and they're ready to take on and potentially take down the Indianapolis Colts this Sunday. Now moving on to the Jacksonville Jaguars. 1-4 start. They just took down the Colts for their first win of the season, and they'll be taking on the Bears in London next week. So honestly, the Jaguars had a good win. Good comeback win. Honestly, 37 points by Jacksonville. That is impressive. But it is against the Colts. And, well, it's the Colts. So I'm not really that big on that win, but in the end, just like almost a lot of the teams that I have in the potential bottom 10, maybe bottom 15 teams, they're probably not going to make the playoffs. And honestly, probably a top 10 draft pick. Now at 27, we got the New York Giants, who just took down my Seattle Seahawks, and will take on the Bengals on Sunday night. 2-3 start for the Daniel Jones-led New York Giants. Even though they got the win, kudos to them, I still think Daniel Jones is not the same guy that beat Seattle just this past Sunday. So we're most likely going to be seeing a downturn. We're probably going to be seeing a decrease in potential for Daniel Jones against the Bengals. But it doesn't mean that the Giants won't win that game. It's really basically 50-50. And honestly, just like all the others I've said, they're not making the playoffs. Now on to the Los Angeles Rams at 1-4, going into their bye after losing to the Green Bay Packers. Now, when it comes to the Rams, I mean, Stafford is a very good quarterback, but the loss of Aaron Donald has really hit this team hard. And honestly, like when it comes to this team, it's just not enough on defense. And they need to improve their defense. That's mostly why they're losing games. Like, yes, there are the occasional mistakes on offense, but most of the mistakes are on defense. And I think that the defense of the Rams needs to improve if they want to even attempt to make the playoffs. Now on to the Chicago Bears at 3-2, just took down the Panthers in Chicago, and now will be headed out to London to face off against the Jaguars. Now, when it comes to the Bears, Caleb Williams did pretty decent these past few weeks, but he's still not the quarterback that is supposed to be the number one overall pick. He needs to do better. And it's kind of looking not exactly like Trevor Lawrence, because obviously he's not having a collapse like Trevor Lawrence did in his first year with Urban Meyer, but it's not good for the Chicago Bears. And most likely the Bears are not going to make the playoffs as a wild card team or a division champion. Next, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who took, honestly, the biggest L on Thursday Night Football to the Falcons. And the New Orleans Saints will be their next opponent in New Orleans. 3-2 start. The probability that they win the division has decreased. And it's still basically just tied between them and Atlanta. But Atlanta is on top. They are leading the division. So most likely that they win the division. But, like, honestly, this Bucs team is still pretty good. So even if they don't win the division championship, they most likely will be in the playoffs as a wild card team. Because that's just how good Baker Mayfield and the Bucs are. Now, moving on to the New Orleans Saints, who just took an L to the Kansas City Chiefs on Monday Night Football. They'll be taking on the Bucs at home, and then they're starting 2-3. To be honest, and the injury to Derek Carr is going to be crucial to this team. And even if Derek Carr hasn't been playing his best football, he's still their quarterback. And I don't think Jake Haener will be replacing him. Maybe, just maybe, start Spencer Rattler. But that is most likely high improbability. But it's also not impossible. I think that Jake Haener will still be the backup. And if, obviously, Carr can't go for next week, which he most likely will, then at that point, I think that, yeah, they're probably going to put Haener in, but it would be fun to see Spencer Rattler as a New Orleans Saints starting quarterback. Now on to the Washington Commanders at 4-1, leading the NFC East, and just took down Cleveland. They'll be taking on Baltimore in Baltimore. So to be honest, Jaden Daniels has been doing pretty well, and I expect him to continue doing so. This Commanders team is not only leading the NFC East, but honestly, one of the best teams, not including Minnesota, in the NFC. Like, that's just how good they've been this year. And perhaps them not having Dan Snyder as their owner is partly the responsible. But you can't also fault the fact that they had Jaden Daniels being basically the best quarterback out of the draft class that just came out. But when it comes down to it, do I put Jaden Daniels on a high pedestal? Not right now. Even though he's doing pretty well, I still have him low because anything can happen. Now on to the New York Jets. They just lost in London to the Minnesota Vikings, and they'll take on the Bills on Monday Night Football at home. 2-3 start. I'm going to just say this. Aaron Rodgers is no longer the quarterback he was in Green Bay. There is no comparison. And honestly, it might also be because they need wide receiver help. Which, by the way, if y'all didn't know, the Raiders are probably going to be shipping out their wide receiver, Devontae Adams, because he doesn't want to be in Las Vegas anymore, apparently. And the biggest team that he'd want to go to is New York to go play for the Jets and his old teammate Aaron Rodgers. So when it comes down to it, I think that the Jets are going to do pretty decently, but it's going to be 50-50 whether they make the playoffs or not. Now on to the Denver Broncos, who are 3-2, just took down the Raiders and will take on the Chargers, who are coming off a bye. So right now we're seeing a tough team in Denver. We're seeing Bo Nix be the quarterback he needs to be in Denver. And obviously, he's not the best quarterback. He probably is the second or third best quarterback in this class. But it still doesn't change the fact that the Broncos are on a high. But how high will they go as they are facing a team that not only was on a bye, so they were resting, but they're also facing a team that's pretty good with Justin Herbert. So realistically, there's most likely a high probability that they lose this game, but you don't count out the Broncos just yet because they've surprised us before. Now on to the Arizona Cardinals, 2-3, just took down the 49ers in an upset, and now we'll take on the Packers in Lambeau Field. When it comes down to it, Kyler Murray did pretty well, and honestly, Cardinals are on a rise. They're obviously not a top team, but like they're keeping like in check the 49ers, who are supposed to be the NFC West champions this year. So that is pretty surprising. Honestly, I see the Cardinals going on a rise, but just like the Broncos and Jets, it's 50-50 whether they make the playoffs or not. Now coming off a bye week, and that is the Los Angeles Chargers. And they're going to be taking on the Denver Broncos, and this is going to be a tough game, 2-2 Chargers Broncos. So yeah, I'm thinking that LA, they're all rested up. They're going to be pretty good, pretty ready to take on the Broncos. So I have no issues with this. So there's really nothing to say more about it. They're honestly doing pretty well under Jim Harbaugh. And yeah, they got a pretty good running game. Justin Herbert's pretty decent, and the receivers are pretty decent this year. So yeah, I expect a little bit better from the Chargers, and the Broncos, they're going to be tough to defeat. We have a big win for Atlanta as the Falcons at 17 just beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Thursday Night Football, and will take on the Carolina Panthers in Charlotte, North Carolina. So when it comes down to it, like Kirk Cousins, very good game, over 500 yards passing, incredible. But can he keep that up? I definitely think he can keep that up with Carolina, but it all really depends on who's next, because after Carolina, that's when the struggles will probably hit the Falcons hard. And most likely that for right now, I see the Bucks and the Falcons being the battle between the division for the title. But like I said, it's really just a coin toss at this point. Now next we got the Miami Dolphins, 2-3, just took down the Patriots in Foxborough and now are headed into their bye. This is the time to get healthy, because even though you beat the Patriots, it's just the Patriots. So like really they need Tua back. They need Skylar Thompson back. They need a lot of players back. And to be honest, the weeks to come are not going to be pretty for the Miami Dolphins if they continue on this downward streak. Even though they won against the Patriots, it wasn't the cleanest win ever. Now moving on to the Cleveland Browns, 1-4, just lost to the Commanders and will take on the Eagles at Lincoln Financial Field. Then you get the Browns, Deshaun Watson. They're not going to bench him, even though they should. But, like, in the end, what's more important? Quarterback, you're paying $200 and some million to play football, and over $100 million guaranteed. And also the guy who is being accused of so many horrific things, which I'm not going to mention here what they are, but I imagine you all know what he's allegedly done to certain types of people. But when it comes down to it, the Browns don't only have a Deshaun Watson problem, they have an offensive problem. And realistically, they need Nick Chubb back as well. That's another key figure that they need back, and they need him back now. Now, moving on to the Indianapolis Colts, who just took an L from Jacksonville and will take on the Titans in Tennessee. 2-3 start for the Colts. Anthony Richardson is not really the top quarterback in Indianapolis. Honestly, that's Joe Flacco. Imagine your backup being better than you. And to be honest, Joe Flacco has been pretty good since he was in Cleveland last year and now in Indianapolis, winning against the Steelers the previous week. But when it comes down to it, the Colts are still that bottom team of the AFC South, and they used to battle for championships, but now it's basically just the Texans and the Texans alone. But when it comes to Anthony Richardson and the Colts, they're not gonna do pretty good against the Titans. Now on to the Seattle Seahawks. 3-2 start. They just took an L from the Giants after taking an L from Detroit, and now they're facing off against the 49ers on Thursday night. Yeah, this ain't gonna be pretty for us Seahawk fans. Yes, I know that the 49ers lost to the Cardinals, but still, the Seahawks, their injuries is the one that's really hampering their progress. And that's just what's happening. I just don't expect Seattle to do much against San Francisco, especially due to injury. That's mainly why Seattle's been losing, because you get to see plays like Geno Smith throwing for over 200 yards in the game against the Giants, and then you get 3 touchdowns for Kenneth Walker against the Lions on Monday night the previous week. It's still up to how we perform without our guys who are injured. That's how we need to work at it, because to be honest, I don't think the Seahawks will be doing any better if their players continue to be injured. Now on to the Cincinnati Bengals, starting 1-4 and just lost to the Ravens in a close matchup and on overtime. And then you get them facing off against the Giants on Sunday Night Football. I'm just saying, the Giants, and the Bengals. It's going to be an even matchup, but it's also going to be a very interesting game to watch. Danny Jones versus Joe Burrow. It's not the Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen type games, or CJ Stroud and Josh Allen games, or whatever other quarterback you want to see. But it's two teams that are not functioning as properly as they should. So I think the Cincinnati versus New York would be interesting to watch. Now on to the Dallas Cowboys. 3-2, just took a win over the Steelers. Will take on the Lions this upcoming week. When it comes to the Cowboys, they did pretty good. Dak Prescott threw 2 picks. Yeah, I know that's a bad thing, but he threw 2 picks in that game. One was on Sunday, and the other was on Monday. Yeah, he threw 2 picks on 2 different days in the same game. But that's besides the point. The point is, the Cowboys, Rico Dowell has been pretty decent for the Cowboys. Dak Prescott has been doing his job, and CeeDee Lamb has been wide open at times. So what I'm thinking is that the Cowboys most likely will lose to the Lions, but they'll definitely put up a good fight this time. Well, Pittsburgh, you just took an L from the Cowboys, and you're 3-2 now. You're going up against the Raiders in Las Vegas. When it comes to the Steelers, oh my gentle Jesus, is Russell Wilson going to be the starter? Who knows? But I'm thinking Justin Fields should at least remain the starter for the meantime. I think that he's been doing a pretty good job. It's not entirely his fault that the team loses. There are other reasons, so we can't put the full blame on him. So, in the end, I think the Steelers will do decently against Las Vegas, while potentially, I keep saying this, potentially going 4-2. Now, on to the Philadelphia Eagles, who just came off a bye and are going up against the Browns, 2-2. Honestly, I think that the Eagles, under Jalen Hurts, is going to be a pretty good team. Saquon Barkley has been lighting it up for the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Eagles defense will most likely keep them in check. Like, the only real issue is mostly the offensive line, especially the center, Cam Jurgens. Is Cam the best replacement for Jason Kelsey? That is the biggest question. And realistically, either ways, you see like guys like Saquon Barkley go down the field with no issue. So realistically, it's not only down to the offensive line; it's also down to the players behind the offensive line. But like I said, the most important uh, part of the football team, specifically the offense, is the offensive line because without them, quarterbacks are killed and running backs are stopped right there at the line. Now, moving on to the San Francisco 49ers, who honestly just took an L, a big one, to the Arizona Cardinals, and will take on the 3-2 Seahawks on Thursday night as a 2-3 team. Now, I still think that San Francisco is a better team, hence why I have them ranked higher than the Seahawks. But this is really going to hinder the 49ers because if San Francisco starts losing and losing and losing some more, they're probably going to be seeing a team who went to the Super Bowl go to out of the playoffs. So yeah, I expect a lot more from Brock Purdy, George Kittle, and Debo Samuels and Brandon Ayuk and all those defenders they have there. So yeah, I expect a lot more from them against the Seahawks on Thursday night. Now on to the Buffalo Bills, 3-2, just took an L from the Texans, and will take on the Jets on Monday night in New York. Well, technically New Jersey, but you get the point. The point is, the Buffalo Bills, they are honestly gonna be the better team. Obviously, I think Josh Allen is pretty good. He was kept toe and toe with the Texans last week. Most likely, they're gonna be blowing out the New York Jets by halftime. But it always comes down to also injury, because injury also affects a team. And if you have too many of them, and if they're severe and they come back from a severe injury, yeah, you're not going to have a good time. And here we have one of the undefeated teams, 5-0 Minnesota Vikings, just took down the Jets in London and will be going on their bye. And this is a perfect time to rest and then prepare for next week because, to be honest, the freaking Vikings are just insanely amazing. Like, how did Sam Darnold go from, oh, this kid is going to screw over the Vikings, to leading them to a 5-0 record and falling out in every single game he's played? That's the thing. It's not only that he led this team to 5-0, but that he led it and he balled out in all those games. And to be honest, I expect more from that in the weeks to come. Now on to the Green Bay Packers, who just took a dub from the LA Rams and will take on the Cardinals at home. 3-2, Jordan Love back from injury. And honestly, at one point, I know last week he also was back from the injury report, but he wasn't the same guy there in that game against Minnesota. Against LA, different story. And most likely, same story as they did with the Rams against Arizona, especially being at home. I think that Jordan Love might not do pretty well, but I still think that his team will do great. Now on to the Houston Texans, 4-1, just took down the Bills and will most likely take down the Patriots in Foxborough. When it comes to CJ Stroud, he's pretty good. When it comes to Tank Dell, pretty good. Nico Collins, pretty good. Stephon Diggs, pretty good. There is nothing bad about the Houston Texans at this point. They are doing good and they're on their way potentially make it to their first ever Super Bowl appearance, let alone title. But it's still up for discussion. So I still think that the Texans are a top 5 team, specifically, like I put them top 4. But they could be up at number 2 one of these days. Now on to the Baltimore Ravens. 3-2, just took down the Bengals, going up against the Commanders. And I'm going to say this. I don't care if it's Lamar Jackson or whoever, Derrick Henry in the backfield. This team, the Commanders, are looking unstoppable. But they're not, obviously. But I still think that they are a pretty good team, and the Washington Commanders are definitely no slouches. So they're not going to be handing over this game to Baltimore. That's not how this is going to go. What's going to happen is that Baltimore's going to try their best to win the game. They might actually win it, but it all comes down to one, will the offense really work out against that Commanders defense, and vice versa with the defense of the Ravens and the offense of the Commanders. Now moving on to the Detroit Lions, 3-2, coming off a bye, and will take on the Cowboys in Dallas. When it comes to the Detroit Lions, Jared Goff has been doing pretty well. Honestly, their best decision was signing him to a new contract and trading for him all those years ago. Obviously, it worked out in the long game rather than in the short game, as it worked out in the short game for the Rams, as obviously we saw Matthew Stafford win a Super Bowl the first year he was in LA, but we saw Detroit last year nearly make it to the Super Bowl. And I think that they're a top contender to make it back to the Super Bowl, NFC Championship again, and potentially the Super Bowl. And honestly, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs in that backfield, totally unstoppable. And obviously at number 1, we got the winners of Monday Night Football, the Kansas City Chiefs, 5-0. The one of the only two teams are 5-0, the other being the Vikings. They're going into their bye week, so some rest for Travis Kelce, some rest for Patrick Mahomes, for Kareem Hunt, for Carson Steele, for that offensive line, and just get ready for the next week, which is week 7. They're going to get ready for that week, and to be honest, who doesn't see this team going back to the Super Bowl? Because to be honest, when we go oh, they're going to make the Super Bowl. They make the Super Bowl. Maybe they win, maybe they lose. But every single time we say, the Chiefs, they're nothing this year. They're nothing this year. And look what happened. We said they're nothing last year and they won the Super Bowl. Do not underestimate these people because they will just prove you wrong on an insane level. Now, that was it for this video. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. Who do you think should be higher and who do you think should be lower? Tell me down in the comments below. Now, like this video if you liked it, subscribe, and hit the notification if you want more videos. And I'll see you guys next time.